All right, it says we're going to record to the cloud. Got that up there. All right, so I'm going to share my screen here. So this is, let's see here. Pull it up. All right, so if y'all are in the room, you've got a copy of this. So I wanted to run through, this is the way that I do a listing consultation. This is, a lot of it straight from Ninja, but it is, I also want some feedback from you all just in terms of what you do, tips and tricks. There's a lot of things that I can, that I think are valuable, but so much of it is just the kind of the overall process of what works. So just big picture, why do we want listings? Right now, why do we want listings?
Listings are a lot easier.
Because it's probably something that you're going to be able to have success with in a pretty good way, right? So that being said, there's definitely a way to do this well and a way to not do it well. Has anybody ever been fired as a listing agent? No, I have on a few occasions. Every time, and it hasn't happened in a long time, but the times that I've been fired or have lost a listing, it's because I didn't follow this process. It was usually my earlier years and I was kind of winging it, and I just didn't, and I don't even want to say I didn't know what I was doing, but I didn't set expectations on the front end and I didn't follow a process. I wasn't being a leader. I wasn't being the professional that they hired me to do. So I think that is something that's really critical from a mindset standpoint. A lot of times sellers will say, I want to give you the listing. You're not giving me anything. Thank you for your kindness, but you're not giving me anything. You're hiring me as a professional to help you achieve a goal. If you want to do that on your own, that's great, right? If you want to go sell, like I don't have any problem with for sale by owners, generally speaking. Put this thing up here so you're not looking at my nostrils. Feeling like that's happening here. But yeah, generally speaking, like I don't have a problem with you doing for sale by owners. Sorry, y'all. Should have thought about that beforehand. All right, we're going to share screen again. We're going to try that again. Online, hopefully y'all can see this here. If you can't, just say something. But I don't have a problem with you going for sell by owner. Sometimes that makes sense for people. I don't think it makes sense for most people because it's what is the challenge with selling as for sell by owner? Yeah, like why would a seller not want to do that? Why would they want to hire us instead? They don't want to deal with the people, right?
They know how to correctly price their house.
They know how to correctly price their house. Paperwork, do they know what paperwork to? Oh, I'm just going to hire an attorney. I got it. I'll just have the closing company do it. Right? Yeah. Yeah. It all comes down to kind of like time, effort, and risk, right? Risk is probably the biggest one. If I have a $400,000 house, do I know that I can sell it for $400,000, or do I think I can sell it for, people will say they want to save money on a commission or a real estate fee, but really it's about their net. I mean, that's the key. I always tell people this: if somebody tries to make an argument for a commission objection, and they say, oh, will you do it for less, or will you take, that is just, to me, that's a no-brainer. They don't really know what they're doing, and they're asking because they think that's what they're supposed to do, but they don't know what they're doing, and they're not paying attention to their most their most important piece, which is where do you need to be and when do you need to be there. And if we know those variables, then we can have a pretty good sense of how much we can expect to get for your house. And my job is to get you where you're going on time and to maximize your proceeds within those parameters, right? If there's a house that'll sell for $500,000 today and a seller wants $600,000, can I sell it for $600,000? Yes. It might be in 6 years or 3 years, but I can do that It just may take way longer than they're needing or wanting. So there, you know, it all comes down to how much can I get for my house today? So one of the things that is really important, and this has really changed the way that I've done a lot of the process, is doing this pre-listing interview. What I used to do is, I'm going to pull it up for you. I don't think I printed this out, but I'll print a copy of this just so. If somebody wants to grab these off the printer in a minute for in the room, you can, but this is this is really helpful. And I've kind of memorized it at this point. But I try to go through this question, this series of questions with every single seller. What I used to do is, if I'd get a lead from, maybe it was somebody I knew or a past client or somebody that I had, that I'd seen that was referred to me, they'd say, hey, I'm thinking about selling my house. I'd be like, great, oh, that's awesome. Like, when can we meet? And I'd set up a meeting and go in blind. And I think the time that I realized I needed a better process was, I went into a past client's house that I hadn't talked to in a long time. They called me. I didn't ask him any questions. I set up a meeting for 2 days later. I did all these comps and I went to their house and they doubled the size of the house and done an addition. And I was like, I just wasted a lot of effort. And I went over there, like, basically thinking that I was going to, you know, have all this information for them based on what I remember the house looking like a couple years before. And I didn't even know that they'd done an addition. So, first thing to do is ask them, if they call you, ask them, you know, if it's all right, do you have a few minutes? Can I ask a few questions before we meet? Absolutely. So obviously, you know their name, or hopefully you get their name, property address, who the owners or decision makers. That can be important. Maybe somebody's going through a life change. Maybe it's a divorce. Is there a spouse that you're not speaking to that also has to be a part of this? Is there a parent that helps you buy the place that's on the loan that needs to be a part of this? Knowing the decision makers now makes a difference. Biggest question, why are you selling? Tell me what's going on. Where are you going? Right? Well, we're thinking about, you know, moving out of state, or we're thinking about upsizing. Okay. That's why is that beneficial? You can help them, right? It's another sale, right? So really important information. Also, when do you need to move? Critical information, right? Because that's our job. Our job is not to get the highest price for them. It's to what? Make it as easy as possible and get them where they need to be in the time that they need to be there, right? We're going to say that again. Our job is to get somebody where they need to be in the time that they need to get there. That is why they hire us, to help them. So can you describe your house? If you've been over there, ask them anyway. Yeah, tell me about your house. I know I've been there a few times, or I remember it from when I helped you buy it, but you know, tell me, I think you've got 3 bedrooms. Is that all still the case? And at this time, I'm usually doing, if I'm on the phone with them and I'm in front of a computer, I'm usually multitasking a little bit, and I'm doing a couple things. One, if I don't know when they bought it, I'm pulling it up on RealTrax and CRS in the tax records, because I'm just going to have some information. Do they have a mortgage? Did they buy it with another agent? Why are they not calling that other agent? That could be a red flag. Maybe they're crazy, or maybe that other agent's out of the business or whatever. But I want to know that information just so I can have a little background. Could you describe your house I'm sorry, how long you owned your home? You know, you may know that on tax records. So that's pretty easy, but that's just good info to know. This is a great question. What sold you in your home when you bought it? This is really important to ask, even if you help them buy the house. What do you think you get from this? What are you starting to build? You're starting to build, you're like marketing, right? You're starting to build, because if the location and the awesome yard and the outstanding kitchen is what sold them on the place, what do you think is going to sell the next person? Those things, right? So those are all features. If that's why they bought the house, that's really critical to know, because otherwise you're going to have a listing that's going to say, awesome house, great location in the heart of fill in the blank. And it looks like every other listing, right? As opposed to saying, this kitchen is like nothing you've ever seen, or this is a yard that you could play flag football in, like whatever. I mean, you can tailor your descriptions to really make your listings pop and be a little bit different than the others out there by knowing what their favorite features are and not just assuming. Have you done any updating? That would have been helpful to know with that giant addition. Yeah, we doubled the size of the house. Oh, okay. Tell me more about that. What about this question? If you were to stay in your home another 5 years, is there anything you would do to it? What are you finding out here? I'll give you a hint. So here, you're finding out what's going to sell somebody else in the house, what the selling, number 8 is what the selling points are, if I can highlight that. And number 10 is what? These are the objections, right? If you were to stay in your home another 5 years, is there anything you do to it? I know you're not planning on staying in there, but if you were, like, what would you do? Well, yeah, we probably, like, we had rain this morning. There's roof's leaking a little bit, so probably have to do that. Okay, important. The kitchen's pretty tiny, and or it's old or whatever, right? They're going to talk about some things that they might want to update, and they're dreaming, right? These are the things that we thought about doing, but instead of doing them, we're just going to move. We're going to give those problems to somebody else, right? And so what that does is that then gives you some objections that you're going to have to overcome. If you know that on the front end, you can start thinking about, like, all right, especially when you're running comps. If you're not just going in and giving them a Zestimate, you're actually giving them like a human opinion. So one of the other things that I'm doing at the same time is I'm pulling up their Zestimate on Zillow, because have they looked at that? Absolutely. 100% guaranteed they've looked at it. And they might tell you they haven't, but I guarantee you they have, right? Don't believe them if they don't say they haven't. Most people are like, yeah, I mean, Zillow says this. I don't know how accurate that is, right? I want to know what that is, so that, because they assume we look at that stuff all the time, right? They assume that we know that stuff too. So I want to have that in front of me. So while I'm asking this, I'm pulling up Zillow and I'm saying, all right, so for a moment, pretend you're a buyer. If you were a buyer walking through your home, trying to buy it, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your own home? I don't know. What do they usually say, like 7, 8. If they say it's a 10, maybe it's that beautiful, or they're just a narcissist. I don't know. This is another question. What would it take for your house to be a 10? And usually they'll tell you the things that they already told you, right? Well, an updated kitchen, right? You're also looking for things that they're not changeable, right? So what can't we change?
Location.
Can't change the location. We can't change our neighbors, right? Well, it would be a 10 if there wasn't like a industrial power system right next door to us or whatever, right? It wasn't a 10 if we weren't right at the railroad crossing, whatever that is. So, and then what about this question? Would y'all feel comfortable asking that? Yeah.
We always ask that.
Yeah, I think
What do you think you want for the property?
yeah. So that's probably a better way of saying it, is like, do you have a price in mind that you're thinking you want for the property, right? I don't like the way that's worded. What are you going to be asking for the property? But I prefer that. I feel like
because that's something that.
Yeah.
If I ask that question worded that way,
Exactly.
they say, isn't that your job?
yes, and they'll usually say like, well, that's what I'm trying to get from you, right? So I've got the tax record up. I'm going to see if they've refinanced it. Chances are, with low rates, they have. Maybe they've owned it for 5 years. Chances are they refinanced it a year ago. Have you had a recent appraisal? Did you refinance the property at all? I think we did. Yeah, I think so. Like maybe a year ago. Do you remember what that appraisal came back at? Or do you have a copy of that appraisal? What did that come back at? Right? They have an idea. You're looking at Zillow. If they give you that information, which usually they're not hiding that information. If they are, it's like, that might be a red flag. It's a little weird. This is not a game, right? But you're helping them understand kind of what are their expectations. Do you own your property free and clear, or do you have a loan? Do you know the balance on your loan? So on their tax record, it'll show how much the loan was for. It doesn't show how much they paid off of it, right? Maybe they had a windfall of cash and they paid off their mortgage. That's helpful to know. And again, this is just a ballpark estimate. What are 3 things you're looking for in a realtor? I'm not sure what T is. This question, is there another way that you could ask that question? Yeah, what's important to you as part of this process?
What are your expectations?
Yeah. Or even take it off of you for a little bit. Just like, tell me what's important for you about this process. They'll tell you what, especially if they worked with another agent when they bought it. They'll usually tell you, well, we want somebody who's, really knows the area well. And I noticed that you've sold a lot of houses in the neighborhood. Or we want somebody who is going to return phone calls, right? Usually it's about like somebody who's going to be knowledgeable of the market, and either you are knowledgeable of the market, or because of your marketing efforts, they have a perception that you're knowledgeable of the market, right? So if you, in your own neighborhood, if you send out monthly postcards to your own neighborhood with, here's the properties that sold in the last month, as simple as that, they're going to believe that you do a lot of activity in the neighborhood, and they're going to think that you're knowledgeable, which you are, right? You're doing that research. So are you interviewing any other brokers for this job? Some people don't feel comfortable asking that. I think it's important to know. How many times, like on a percentage basis, do y'all compete for a listing with somebody else?
15%.
15%? Yeah. It's not that often. It's not that often. So, so sometimes I'll ask this, sometimes I won't. Have you considered going for sell by owner? Oh gosh, why would we give them that idea? Right? If they're going to do it, they're going to do it. And yeah. And so some people you're not giving them an idea, but you can ask them that. Again, if you don't want to ask them that, again, if they're thinking about doing it, it's important to know. You'll probably get a sense. If it's somebody you've never heard of or never met before, they're probably going to interview a couple other people, and they're probably considering that. So just, you can bring some stats on that.
I've had where it's like, oh, their son is really interested in buying a property. Maybe we'll just do that with that and we'll next slide.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay, so that's a good, so that was a good example of, yeah, so, well, one of our neighbors has approached us, or a friend of ours has approached us about, they might want to be interested in buying our house, but we're just kind of trying to see what the value is, right? So, okay, so you're kind of using me for my expertise and information. That's okay, right? If we need to talk about that, I think when we meet, I can probably, chances are those usually don't work out. I found those sort of, what if the brother's cousin's friend buys it? Because that's a sampling of one, as opposed to the market, right? We're going to use the power of our marketing to reach the market and see a lot more people, thereby creating urgency, creating competition, getting you more money in the time that you need to get, so that you can get where you want to go and the time you want to get there. Again, that's sort of a way of asking, like if they tell you that, or how else would you ask this? Like, how do you figure that out if they don't tell you? That's a good question, because that does come up sometimes.
Obviously, why if you want to market, that person is really interested, and if they can join in. And the two, if you want to sell to them, perhaps maybe you need the highest. Right? Because sometimes sellers are very protective about integrity when it comes to tax. They want someone who's not.
Yeah.
So they want someone who's interested in marketing.
Yeah, so you can acknowledge that, and you could put an exclusion in there if they want, or they might just need your help with that, and that's great. But
That's usually what happens.
yeah, if we need to put an exclusion in there, or if you decide you don't want my help on that front, but chances are they're going to want your help anyway, and so they don't care. Have you sold a property before? Yes, maybe they have done it before. Maybe they've done it 10 times. Maybe they've sold more properties than listings you've had. That's important to know about. Anything else I should know about your home? Any questions? And then what happens next? So this talks about one call versus two call. The one call is basically, I'm going to go there and we're going to go through your home, and I'm going to try to list your house that day. That's not my preference to do that. I like to see the house, go through, explain the process, and then usually there's some things that we need to do, and then we'll start the paperwork, have them fill out the disclosures, send them a listing agreement, and then we'll kind of make that step two. How do y'all do it?
In terms of next step,
Yeah.
mean, that's typically how I would do it as well. And obviously setting up a face-to-face meeting. And just kind of let them know what sort of information I'm gonna bring to them as well. I'm gonna bring some comparable properties, and then also bringing some statistics about, how many showings we're likely to expect and things like that. And just kind of the demand we're likely to see for your house. Especially, I feel like in the market we have now, people want to know, well, how many offers are we likely to receive?
Yeah.
Or, is it going to go above?
Right.
And I think is it going to go above question right now is something that I get asked a lot.
Yeah.
And how much?
Yeah.
And how much,
we think
right.
we're actually gonna get over the list.
Yeah, and we are not the Wizard of Oz. Like, we don't have all the answers to those, to the market questions, because your house is worth what a ready, willing, and able buyer will pay for it.
Exactly.
Absent the competition, right? And so, we'll go through the listing consultation package, but,
And I do think it is important nowadays to ask, when you do come up with a listing price, to ask them, would you be comfortable if we just got this listing price? Because, like you asked, if we got an offer tomorrow and that's the only offer we get for list price, are you comfortable selling it at
Yeah.
this price?
are you comfortable selling at this price? Yes. And so, and I don't do that. I wouldn't do that over the phone.
No.
But I have most of the information I need to sell their house. Obviously, I still want to do a walkthrough of the house, but from that questionnaire, I know what the selling points are. I know what the objections are going to be. Even if I haven't seen the house, I've got enough information that I can use to kind of run some comps. If there's things I'm not clear on, like, just ask that. But it's a 5-10 minute phone call. You can be quick about it, but gather that information on the front end, and you're going to go in much more prepared, and they're going to feel more comfortable, which is most important, that you're a professional, you're taking the lead, and you know what you're doing. So deliver a pre-listing packet. This is something that most people do not do. However, it is really valuable. Again, it gets you in front of the house before you're walking up. When you're walking up to their house for the first time and you're kind of making yourself look good, you're focused, maybe a little nervous about walking in their house, and you're not paying attention to what the outside of the house looks like. You with me? It's important that you go by the house and look at it before you go there for the very first time, because they're watching you through a window as you're walking up, and you may have knowledge of that or feel that. And so you're trying to get to the front door as quickly as you can to make sure you're on time, and you're not paying attention to that feeling of the first impression. What does the curb appeal look like? How did the neighbor's dog try to kill you on the way in? Like, you didn't even notice that because you were focused on the front door. Like, what, all those things, do trees need trimming? Are there plants? Is there landscaping? Do they need, like, what? It's important to get a sense of that. So the pre-listing packet is a great way to just drop that off. You can use those pretty boxes that we have. You could just print out, truly, you could print out this, the listing consultation, which I don't have to print it out, but just a copy of that. You could bind it and you could drop it off, write a little note, and let them know if you're going to do that. Let them know, hey, I'm going to be dropping something off. If you want to look through it, it gives a little bit of information about me, my company, and just the overall process. We'll go through that when we meet, but just want to give you a chance to look at it on the front end. You can even do a whole folder and print out a copy of the listing agreement and the property condition disclosure and put your fee pre-printed in the listing agreement, put their property address. Like, again, the more you do as a pre-listing package, the more information they have, the more professional that they think and believe that you are, and the more likely that they'll believe, which is true at that point, that you'll be able to get the job done. So property walkthrough, first thing I do is, walk into the house. I always look at their feet and see if they do not have shoes on. I always offer to take my shoes off, right? That's, especially in a day like today. It's, people can, and they if you don't do that, and it's, different cultures, but some people just, my buddy lives in New York City, and I walked in to go visit him, and his shoes were off, and I didn't pay attention to that. I walked around and then I was like, oh, I should take my shoes off. He's like, yeah, I mean, the sidewalks are kind of nasty. And like the amount of dogs that I saw like peeing on the sidewalk, it was like, oh yeah, that's a thing in New York to do for sure. So pay attention to that, be respectful. But during the property walkthrough, so you can ask these questions. How many properties have you sold? You may already have that information. Again, these are just, when did you last sell it? What were your experiences like? This is just all rapport building. Asking him again why you're selling your home, or just reviewing what you heard. All right, so you need to be in Chicago by July 1st, right? So we're going to have, and we'll talk about that, but how soon you need to be there, right? where it says fill out calendar, I always bring a copy of a,
You know, we did the calendar, several of you were here for that calendar conversation. That's a way to get them off the, some pie in the sky price and get them back on track of time.
yeah, I always bring a one-page calendar, right? Where are we now? We're in April. Okay, so it's April 12th right now, right? You need to sell your house by July 1st. Okay, so let's say June 30th. All right, so we're gonna work backwards. Let's assume that it's gonna take 30 to 40 days to get your house from contract to closing. Let's just say 45 to add a little bit of padding in there. All right, so that's there. And now we're back at May 15th. Okay, so we have approximately 30 days to get your house ready. No, I'm not moving until July. I know we have 30 days to get your house under contract, starting today. It will make them very serious quickly because that's the reality, right? The worst thing you can do in this market is throw something in the market and see what happens, right? I think it takes more effort to get a listing done right in this market to maximize what you need to do. So show them the timeline, let them know the realistic expectations and say, all right, that's assuming if we put it on if we have to get a contract by May 15th in order to close, to make sure we can close by June 30th, which means we need a couple weeks to market it, which means we need to start marketing it by, let's call it this Thursday. That's in 2 weeks. Okay, so we have 2 weeks to get everything done, photos, staging if we need it, all the stuff. So it's going to make them really serious. I'm glad you called me now. This is really good timing.
I was
So,
telling them, you only get one shot, you only get one chance to be the market.
yeah,
And we want you to be as perfect as you possibly can. I don't care if every closet's come down, but.
Just get rid of the pile of stuff in the
Yeah.
backyard.
So one way, if they've got something that's not like they've got a lime, like electric lime green living room. Maybe that's a thing for some people. Probably doesn't help sell the house. So are you gonna be selling the house with all the paint colors as they are, or were you thinking about repainting it? Right? How do you want to price it? I said selling. We should say pricing. That's what this says. Do you want to price your house with this carpet or new carpet? Do you want to price your house with this paint or new paint? Right? If you start talking about that, it'll become clear that, okay, there is not a set price for my house. There is a range. Remember the range that Larry did? Right? There's a range. I prepared a packet of information for you that I delivered yesterday. Have you had a chance to review it? If not, go through it with them. Based on the information, if you have any questions regarding that, I would still go through the listing process with them. I'm going to do that in a second. And I'm going quickly here because I want you to kind of get, again, this is more about process than delivery. Based on the information and package, do you feel I'm qualified to market your home? That can be an awkward question to ask. I don't love that question. It feels a little bit, it doesn't feel great to me, but if they're interviewing a couple of other people, that's probably a fair question to ask. I kind of take an assumptive approach, like I'm going to blow this thing out of the park for you. And if you don't like me, then all right.
By all means, use someone.
By all means, use someone else. See how that goes for you. So would you like me to handle the sale for you? Do you have any questions? They might just be ready at that point. The idea of this is to not go through an hour presentation if they've already made the decision and they're ready to go. But I still go through the consultation because I want them to know and understand the process. So just going through this is just dialogues, right? It says, keep asking, is there anything else, right? If they're concerned, do you feel qualified once we can agree on whatever? Those are, again, you don't have to follow this exactly, have your own dialogue that works for you. But the idea is make sure that you're answering all their questions, that you're providing professional expertise. And then if they're ready to move forward, don't waste an hour of their time and yours, giving them every little detail. That being said, yeah, let them.
Even if you don't know the price yet, because they haven't
Yes.
decided.
You can put a TBD in.
with one caveat. I had an acquaintance that got really mad at me and tried to fire me. Years ago, it was 2010, and I went over, he was like, come over, we'll have dinner. We had dinner. He's like, all right, what do I need to sign? Here, here, here. Great. All right, when did we get started? Boom. 2010, houses weren't selling that fast, right? So 2 weeks later, hey, what's going on? Well, we're still doing this, doing that. 2 months later, he's angry. He's like, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? And he was asking things that frankly we were doing. But guess what? I didn't tell him we were going to be doing that stuff. I just had dinner and had him sign something. So it was a big eye opener for me, that especially with friends and family, don't assume, like, still take the approach of going through the listing consultation package.
100%.
So, yeah. So I like this concept here, but I do think it's important to go through just a little bit. So I'm going to jump over to that for a second. And these are, you can get this all on, if you go to the Google Drive here under Village Toolkit, it says seller presentation and resources, and you can download that. You can also customize your own bio page and whatnot. There's also the pre-listing interview that you can download there. And I can send this stuff out afterwards as well. But let's see here, where is this? Whoops. All right, so listing consultation. All right, a little bit about Village, free rents, one focus. You can customize this stuff. I'm not going to go through all this stuff in specific detail, but this is important. I don't know how to make it one page, but we'll just leave it like that. There's three factors that, what's that? Anyway, there's three factors that influence the sale of your home. This is I go through this very carefully because it is not just my job to sell their home. They have to be involved and on board with it. And the market has to be right? There's things that are influenced by the market. There's things that are influenced by you, and there's things that are influenced by me. I usually say there's things that you control, there's things that I control, and there's things that neither of us control, which is the market, right? So we cannot control interest rates. They are going up. That affects borrowing power, which might affect the sale of your home. We can't change your location, and we cannot change the competition. If another house that looks better than yours and is right down the street and comes on the market right when we come to the market for less money, that will sell first. And we are not going to be first in line. And I use those terms. That will sell first, and we are not going to be first in line. Like, I want them to have this mindset of, oh, there's an order. It's not just like, willy-nilly, like people come on. There's an order of how things sell, right? There might have been 3 homes in their neighborhood, greater neighborhood, that sold in the last month. Those sold in a specific order. Maybe it was based on what came on the market first, but chances are one of them probably was not priced well or didn't look right or was in a weird location. Those 3 factors didn't line up, and so the buyers chose a different one first. So marketing, I talk about that, advertising, website photography, and my network. I always tout this. One of the reasons you're hiring me is because the access to the network I have. There's a reason that people don't just put their house on Zillow and get an email from somebody else and sell it. It's because the network that we have, that we spent a long time cultivating and creating, is this thing is very delicate. Is really powerful, and it's valuable, right? So the things that you control, right? I'm going to give you advice on a price and terms that we can probably sell at. I'm going to talk about a range, but ultimately it's about your timeline and your motivation. The old expression is we have to show it to sell it. If we can't show your house, it's harder to sell it. That being said, we've got a lot of really good tools that we can show to make sure out of towners can see it, so that we can build up urgency. I've got a great marketing plan I'm going to go through with you. But once we get through the process, I just want to make sure you kind of understand the basics of how this works and what we do. So next page, selling process. First thing we want to do is define your goals, prepare your property based on your agent recommendations. We're going to do a walkthrough of your house in a minute, or maybe we've already done it. We've probably already done it, where you're writing everything down. Write everything down in every room. Just like bring a notebook as you're walking through. Point out the things that you don't have to say. So you might say, are you pricing this home with that that chandelier or not? But write it down. Like if things jump out at you, if you don't feel comfortable saying that something is probably not a selling feature, then at least write it down so you can have that conversation. Because again, preparing the home, making it look great in the front end will make your job easier, will make their job easier.
And if they have some really nice, over the top, wonderful light fixtures.
Yeah, absolutely. Determine the list price. We're going to talk about a range for your list price today. And then ultimately because what we price our home at is based on your timing, motivation, and also the competition. So we might come up with a price today and then plan on listing your house in 2 weeks. And in between now and then, 2 more properties come on the market. That may affect things. So we're going to talk about, but we may not make a final decision on that until a few days before until we start marketing it. And everybody does that a little bit differently. That's how I do it. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to implement our marketing plan. I'm going to go through that with you in a minute. Then we're going to list it in the MLS. Duh. But say it. The guy that got mad at me said the person he was going to hire was going to put it on all these other websites. He was like, he's going to put my home on like 200 websites. So yeah, I've already done that. It happens automatically. I just forgot to tell you. So next thing you're going to do is we're going to show your property. All we care about at this point is getting people in your home, either online through a virtual tour or in person, because we want showings. Showings are what make people fall in love with your house. That's what we want. We're selling a dream, right? We're going to go through, and maybe I've walked through the house. Maybe I'll bring a stager in. Sometimes I'll tell them little things like get your closet looking like this. Usually I bring a stager in to just kind of do that for me because she's better at it, uses kinder words. And we'll say things like purge as opposed to get rid of, relocate as opposed to hide. So anyway, I've learned a few of those words.
In my presentation, how I talk about before we start talking about actual working through how we're going to show the house, I tell them, say, I know you love your house.
I know you love your house. Yeah.
Years in it with your family, but now your home is now become a product to yourself.
Mhm.
And we talk about how we feel about working with products. And so
Taking that emotion. Yeah. So how do you separate a seller's emotion from their house? Because they can't think logically if they're super emotional about it. And I agree with that.
We have to kind of, once they get into it, and then some of them really are like,
Yeah.
let's get rid of this.
Part of that's another reason why I bring a stager in too, is it gets them packing, right? You're going to have to pack. Packing is hard. It stinks. It's the worst part about it. Like packing and moving, it's no fun. Better to start now than to start 3 days before closing, right? Let's get it looking good now. Start that process. You're gonna have to pack anyway. So
But it is hard, especially people that really, really love it.
yeah.
You just have to get them in that mindset, start thinking it's not your home.
Yeah.
And it kind of gives me permission to go through it and they get really over emotional at some point. It's like, what are we doing?
Yeah, and having a time frame of where they want to go, and when they want to be there. Knowing that is important, right? My job is to get you to Chicago by July 1st. Right, that's our goal. So
Honed in on photographs, it seems to be a big place for them. They understand that you can't do anything. You get your house in the kind of condition
where we can take photos. So we need photos. In order to have photos,
The very first thing
Yeah.
we're gonna have to do.
because every piece of marketing we do, we got photos, okay?
Because video captures things you can't edit. Video.
Yeah.
And I
so-
want to know that, I don't have to take a picture of your garage right now, or all of your closets. But once we start showing it, I'm gonna need that cleaned up as well.
Exactly.
They're trying to get their mind on photos in that calendar, in that you need all your crap out of here. All the ugly stuff has got to be done.
Yeah.
And for painting, it's got to be done by this day.
Yep. So yeah, giving them a list. That part of that first visit to me is, this is the honey-do list, this is the to-do list, where we got to make a list and then we prioritize, right? Maybe like a lot of times I'll hire window cleaners to clean the outside of windows, because windows sparkle, then it just looks,
It's so important.
it makes the house look great.
Wash the windows
Yeah.
inside and out professionally, not your kid with the water hose, and take the screens off.
Yeah, it takes,
Can't believe how much-
and all that stuff
And now look at
takes a
what
long
I lost
time,
my mind.
and it takes a long time, but it will make the house sell for more. Sometimes agents will ask, well, who pays for all that stuff? The seller pays for that stuff. You just help providing them a to-do list of what to do. But those are the seller expenses. They
I
can't,
mean, if they're really good clients, I might pay for the real estate.
yeah, I pay for the staging consultation. It's about $100, $150 for an hour of a stager's time to go through. And again, they really do a good job of, plus it's just, that's like an extension of my team. Okay. It's not just Zach, it's his whole team. So our whole job here, this is really important. Our whole job is to show your parking. All we care about is somebody falling in love. We wanted to fall in love enough that they can make that house theirs, make it feel like it's theirs, and then they write an offer, right? We're gonna get an offer. Maybe we get multiple ones. We can talk about that. But my job is to help you negotiate that offer so that the price, not just the price, but the terms and the dates and the timelines and all the inclusions and exclusions that are in there are what makes your move to Chicago by July 1st work, right? So that's one of the things you're hiring me for, is to help you negotiate that. Inspection. Now, I know things are a little bit different now, but I always tell people the number one reason that deals fall apart is from inspection, right? A buyer falls in love with your house. We've put all this effort. We got the windows clean. It looks great. And then 5 days after they've contracted it, especially if they've won a bidding war, they hired this guy who comes in and gives them a 48-page report with 123 reasons why they shouldn't buy your home. And it scares the hell out of them. Why they just paid too much for it, why they shouldn't buy your home. And it scares the hell out of them, right? Even if somebody negotiates a contract and agrees to buy your house as is, I want to mentally prepare you to plan to give a little bit back to the buyer, right? And we're going to talk about this again whenever we get an offer, but I'm giving you that, just putting that little seed in there right now, because people will lose. Everybody gets emotional and people will walk away from a $500,000 deal over a few $1,000s. Anybody had that happen? TVs, refrigerators, it's crazy. So I put it there. I usually make a little joke about it, and then I bring it back up. It's like, remember when we talked about that? Yeah, this is what's happening. Buyers having buyer's remorse, totally normal. And we need to.
They understand they don't get to agree what the buyers can object to on that inspection.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, there's no mutual agreement there. It's just.
Pre-inspection, sometimes people want to pre-inspect their house. I think there's pros and cons to that. It's kind of like a certified pre-owned car or whatever. But whatever comes up on that, your seller's got to disclose too, or fix, so that if you don't have much time, that could add a whole, bigger list. That being said, if you've got all that stuff and you can, have that ready to go, I wouldn't give the inspection report to a buyer before they write an offer, because that's a problems list. I would give a property condition disclosure that's nicely updated and filled out, that has that information in the seller's. Yeah, you're unselling your house. You're not letting somebody fall in love with it.
I think there's pros and cons to both.
Yeah.
Both ways to do it. You can eliminate somebody.
Could eliminate the inspection.
Have an inspection perhaps. Or, I almost feel like if the seller's going to do a pre-inspection, they're kind of committed to some repairs, right? Because if there's something huge on there, that you've got multiple cost base. Water, standing water costs like $50.
And so the she did the inspection. And she goes, I just want to know what's wrong, so I can. This was like 5 years. That was her strategy.
So on this time to sell, this is just general data. This just shows that there's patterns. Is there a good time to sell my house? This probably doesn't matter that much if I know where they're going. If I'm just talking to somebody generally, I'm considering selling, I'm thinking about maybe moving, I can go through this. But if I already know, then this is big picture data, but there's patterns, right? The most properties come on the market in the spring and peak out in the summertime. They drop off in the wintertime. They come on the market, right? So there's more competition if you're putting your house in the market in May, generally speaking, than there is in February, right? But there's more competition, but there's also more buyers. Chicken and egg, which comes first? I don't know. But this is I won't get into that a ton, but village services. So I go through this line by line, and this can feel tedious to go through line by line, but it's important. I also have a copy of, this is kind of a marketing plan, more like it's similar to this. This is one that I think has some extra stuff in it, but feel free to use that. I can email it out to you if you want. But I go through prominently placed yard signs. As old fashioned as that is, yard signs are a huge driver of activity, right? People drive neighborhoods that they love and dream about being in. And when they see a new sign go up, they get excited, right? And if they don't call you, they're calling their agent, but it works. Secure lockbox on the property, going through the process. Remind them that you're putting it on the MLS. As basic as it is, remind them that. Flyers, brochures. I always like to have a copy of a flyer or brochure that I've done but in the past, or an example from the marketing department of what I'm going to do. Staffed appointment center, remind them. Some people, I heard somebody say once, well, the staffed appointment center, that feels like I'm not doing my job. No, you're definitely doing your job. You're expanding and scaling so that you can make sure that they, what did we talk about was the most important thing, to get people through their front door, right? We want showings. If we miss a showing, we're missing an opportunity to sell your house, right? The old expression is you got to show it to sell it, right? So if you get a showing, that's a great opportunity. I may not be there for every showing. Maybe I'm only going to be there for, maybe I'm not there for any showings, whatever your process is for that. But explain to them that if they can't, sometimes agents might call me to schedule a showing. If they can't reach me, I don't have my phone on right now, I don't want to miss a showing. So there's an appointment center. We hire a team of people. It's available 24/7 to make sure that they can reach you by text, email, or phone call to help coordinate a time that somebody can go and preview your house, because they might be a good buyer for us. So.
I mean, that's how my brother and show the house than miss the show.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, dealing with, talking about pets and things like that. There's some stuff like that. Extensive network of high producing area realtors. That's critical, right? So all of these things are regular status reports. Promise good communication and do it. I always do a 360. I do Matterport tours on every listing I have. I love them. They're an extra few $100. I think it's well worth it. About 5 years ago, I sold a house sight unseen. They looked at the house the first time, the morning of closing. I was scared to death. I thought the whole deal was going to fall apart. And they said, looks just like the Matterport. Let's go to closing. It's like, oh, dodged a bullet there. And then I did it again. Same thing happened another time. So it's like, there's enough people moving in from out of town. I think those are really valuable. I talk about photography. I'm blown away. I showed a listing the other day. I'm blown away at how many people, and thankfully not village agents, I hope, I look every now and then, are using cell phone photos or just poor photography. Like this is your first impression. People will fall in love and pick what to show. Just because the front of the house is the obvious thing, maybe that's not always the best part. Maybe it's a cooler detail, right? This is the same house. This is just somebody's cell phone shot. That's a professional shot. I use a couple of photographers that are a little bit more expensive, but I always say there's like cell phone photos, amateur photos, professional photos, and architectural photos. We give you the highest level of service. We use architectural photographers, and they're going to make your house look like it could be out of a magazine, right? And they photograph it that
And
way.
there's some houses that need that, deserve that.
Yep.
But all properties, in my opinion, deserve professional photography, no matter the price, no matter the location, no matter what it's like.
Yeah.
It's a reflection of it.
Mhm. Visual media, if they don't know what this is, a lot of people, if they've been looking online, they know what these tools are. But I'm going to, I'll usually have one teed up on a phone so that I can pull out my phone. And if they don't know what it is, I can just hand it to them and let them just kind of like drive through an example of a Matterport tour. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is cool. And I'll usually have it keyed up on that dollhouse look so they can zip around. People go bananas over that.
I was telling you before, it's kind of like Google Earth. Move it around.
Yeah.
Focus on something. Most people.
Visual media, again, I'll have a copy of a brochure. I like to do professionally printed brochures. Again, you gotta have the photos, you gotta have the everything done, and then you gotta have that stuff printed before you start marketing it. But internet marketing, this is just to remind them that we market this in two different directions. We market this to buyers and we market this to agents, right? We're marketing your property to our network of agents and then also to buyers. The way we reach buyers is by going to where the buyers are. So whatever websites buyers look at homes on, we're going to have your property there. That's the way I say it. I put other brokerages here because your property is going to show up on the village website, on every other brokerage website, on Zillow, on Redfin, on all the places, right? Generally, they're good with that. I talk about our targeted online ad promotion. If you've ever, clicked on something in a store, didn't buy it, and then next thing you know, you see those shoes or whatever following you around for the next few weeks, we hire a company that does that for your house. So that'll happen after we put it on the market. You will get an automated, and you have to make sure to put them in. It'll happen, but they won't get reports on it unless you add them to the system. But at least tell them that that's going to happen so that they know that we market your property on Instagram, Facebook, and through Google display ads, so that when people are searching the internet based on algorithms that the tech companies have, if they're likely to be in a home buying zone or mood, I don't know what's the term, that whatever the algorithms think, if it's a likely buyer, then they are likely to see your home. And it's kind of a lead capture. It's sort of give a little, get a little. It's a teaser so that when they click on that, they'll get a little bit of information. But if they want a little bit more, if they're on Facebook, it'll say, curious to see more info, more photos, continue with Facebook. That sends me their contact information, gives me an opportunity to follow up, right? And that's the way I explain it.
I always throw a disclaimer in here about all these other websites. I let them know that I'll put it in my lesson, I'll send them a link. And please, goodness, if you see anything in there that I have that's incorrect,
It's a good reminder, yes.
let me know. And by the way, it will be correct on MLS. I can't make sure that it's correct on Zillow. Zillow doesn't understand algorithms, for example. That's one thing that might look different. I had a buyer argue with me over listing, I think. They didn't point me through the state and argued over the bathroom because Zillow said they had. It's like
3 baths as opposed to 2.5.
Well, it's 2.5.
Yeah.
So that's a good disclaimer. Like some of these go to places, depending on the price point, you might go to stuff like lots of land and all other kinds of places that we may or may not be able to control.
Yeah.
The feed on that, how it interprets some of the ads. So just giving you a disclaimer.
Exactly. Yeah. Also a reminder how buyers purchase homes, right? This is something they're hiring us to do. Chances are it's kind of a mystery to them. They don't fully understand the process. We understand the process because we do it all the time. And we also, there's a lot of things that happen that Village does for you, whether it's the promoted ads or through RealTrack syndication. A lot of stuff happens that help market that home that you need to be aware of, even if you're not actively doing it. So how do buyers find out about your home? I think this is really important to talk about. Almost 90% of buyers find homes through their agent. You're hiring me because I've got access to an incredible network of other strong agents. Chances are there's going to be an agent involved on the other side of the transaction. And those agents have access to the best ready, willing, and able buyers. So one of the things I tell them, and we can pull these lists for you, is to, I'm going to pull a list of every other agent that has sold a home in your neighborhood in the last 12 months. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to call every single one of them. And as part of our kind of teaser campaign, I'm going to let them all know and make sure that they know about your property so that if they've got another buyer, they're going to know about that, right? I'm going to send postcards to your neighborhood because if your neighbors have somebody that wants to be in a place, if they want a friend to move into the neighborhood, then they can know about it as well. I talk about showing time, and this is just the other RealTrack showing. Everything's still through showing time here.
And it's a good time as you're talking about showing and whatnot to let them know that you may or may not show their house. If you've ever had a seller upset with you because you haven't shown it, that means I didn't explain.
That's a good point.
How
I mean, it's just all these other agents that are coming through. I mean, one
Right,
agent
you
came
showed
through
it.
twice. You haven't even shown it once.
Yes, they
Yeah.
get very upset.
That's a good
If
point.
you haven't explained in the front end that, why, that slide you just had, that 89% find out through their agent.
Yeah, through their buyer's agent. So I'm marketing to those agents
Right.
directly. I'm also marketing it to buyers, but I'm marketing
It's
to
more
agents.
likely that there will be 2 agents.
That's our highest and best research. You're hiring me for my network, right?
Let them know they don't
And
want
that is
to
something
do
they do not have
that.
access to as a for sale by owner. They just don't.
It's like, you're not technically doing it. house the other day, it's first day of market.
It's like, it might as well be a.
Yeah, she goes, I'm here because we had it solid, so I can get some questions.
Yeah, and I think that's,
I love that.
and that's great. Yeah.
She's doing it.
And it's like that.
So, yeah, so for listing agents, if you've got showing, yeah, I think showing your own listing, if it's done the right way, is a great thing. I think buyer's agents can sometimes feel awkward. It's usually awkward if somebody follows you around the whole time, or if they're just there, like just there lingering and don't say anything much. That's weird too. But give them an overview, tell them about the features of the house. Let them know that you're there if they have any questions, and then get out of the way, let them see the house, follow up with them at the end. Yep, absolutely.
I like the end of the sheet with some special details. I'm here to answer any questions. I'm gonna sit on the front porch.
Yeah. I got a couple phone calls to make. Yep, that's great. Showings versus time in the market, right? So your best activity is going to happen in the first couple of weeks of the listing, right? That's when the most ready, willing, and able buyers are out there. If we miss the mark, oops. Determine the value of your home. If one of those is out of whack, we're not selling your home. If one of these things is out of whack, we are not selling your home. All right, so I make that clear. Well, we can't change the location, so we only got pricing condition to work with. So the prettier the house, the better looking the house, the higher the price, right? All things equal. So overpricing a home. You might think, I'm sure you've heard the market's a little bit hot right now, right? Can you overprice a home? Absolutely. I know that you're hearing that homes are selling above asking price. Those are not overpriced. Overpriced homes are sitting in the market. If y'all were here in the sales meeting last week, we talked about, I think in Davidson County or Williamson County, it was like almost 20% of the market is reduced, of the listings out there actually reducing their price. That's 1 out of every 5 listings is taking a price reduction, which means it's not selling right away for multiple offers. It might when it gets in line. Buyers are very sensitive to that. And the way I equate it is buyers want to feel like they're getting a fair deal. Maybe it's because we're in the South. Maybe it's because, I don't know what it is, but buyers don't like to lowball a property. And especially in this market, they think it's like whatever it's priced at, they assume it's going to sell for that. Either if they think it's too high for them, then they'll just assume some sucker's going to pay for it. But you will sell your house for more money if you price it correctly on the front end, whether that's through competition and a bidding war, or just keeping it on the market for a shorter amount of time. There's this weird suspicion that sometimes sellers will think, well, if you sell the house quickly, then we've left money on the table. I 100% disagree with that. And I've done it too many times to see it, where we should have priced our house here and we could have sold it for right there or a little higher. Instead, we spent 6 months on the market and kept dropping it, finally staged it. They had to move out of the house. It was expensive. They had to get a second mortgage on the house to be able to pay for the house that they were buying, all the things. And then we sell it down here, because after 6 months, or even in this market, after 3 weeks, a buyer's going to walk in there and going to say, huh, looks like it's a pretty good house. It's priced in line. I wonder what's wrong with it. I don't want to be the sucker. So that's when they start feeling like maybe they can lowball, right? So that's really important for them to learn. And again, if you can find an example in their neighborhood of a house that was overpriced, usually it'll drop price by a decent amount in a week. And then it will usually sell pretty close to that list price percentage wise. So and then from a staging standpoint, if I don't, just a quick side note on that, I hate selling vacant houses. To me, I took a staging class and I learned this line from that class. It was the best line ever, is the cost of staging is a fraction of your first price reduction if your house doesn't sell quickly. The cost of staging is a fraction of your first price reduction if your house doesn't sell. So, and that's so true, like staging $3,000, maybe $6,000, right? If you take a $3,000 price decrease on a $500,000 house, do you think it makes any difference whatsoever? No. Like, you're gotta be 10,000 at a minimum, probably $25,000 to make it realistic. You can stage like 5 houses with that money. So the cost of staging is a fraction of your first price reduction. It's better to get it looking good on the front end, then you got all the photos and everything else. Interest rates, this is really key now, the 1% equals 10% rule of thumb. We don't know what's happening right now because rates are going up, right? So rates are shooting up, and this is actually the market. So that's rates. This graph is already about a month old. It's so, you know, for every 1% change in mortgage rates, buyers' borrowing power decreases by about 10%. So we may not be in the market in 3 weeks that we were a month and a half ago. So that's just important to really stay in tune. Part of the reason you're hiring me is I'm in tune with the market. I watch it all the time. Estimated.
I find it hard to give them a price if they're not going to be ready for 6 weeks.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm like, well, I'm just.
We're gonna talk about a range.
When I give them a suggested range, I said, that's if we will never do this weekend.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
It could be different 6 weeks from now.
Yeah,
It probably will be different.
we're gonna talk about a
Sure, tell
range.
people that. I don't want to lose a listing over a price I gave them 2 months ago. Or you never really even talk about it.
Mhm.
As soon as I sell it, it does.
Some of these FAQs, most of the time people get this. I do always cover, do we need to leave the house and the house is being shown? I just had a listing
And take your dog with you.
that,
Please
you know,
take your dog with you.
I didn't know that was happening, but apparently like my seller, and we talked about this. I talked about it on the showing and I talked about it here. And then you were like, hey, do you mind letting him know that, like, would it be cool if they left, if the seller left the house for the inspection or whatever?
Yeah.
I was like, wait, what? It
I know.
was like an embarrassing moment. I was like,
Because I had a call and tell me like, your cell is outside playing grass. And somebody's
Yeah.
in the house and I'm like, what?
yeah. So, and I had no idea. He told me, we laid it all out. He's like, yeah, I can go to my office. I don't go there very often right now because it's still kind of shut down, but I can go there. It's like, awesome. Well, I guess he just was comfortable working from the house and thought he was out of the way, but it is a little awkward. So make sure they leave the house.
Sellers sitting on the front porch, not my sellers, but like, we were standing outside thinking that like it was a buyer, like, you know, causing overlap and showing inside the house. And it's just like, no, the one that's in the finished showing, and they're like, oh no, it's our house, like, it's on the front porch, like, take your time.
Take your time. We'll sit on the front porch. Tell your sellers to leave. They need to leave. Like, I mean, I've had agents say, we're going to do 3 days. Like, I've got this Airbnb. I'm putting you up in an Airbnb. Like, whatever, be creative. Get them out of the house. Keep it clean. Plus, if you've got a family, kids, pets, like, it's way easier to keep that house looking great without living there. So go on vacation. You know, you can go through these again. How should I prepare the home for showing? This is important. It seems obvious, like open the blinds, turn the lights on, leave the lights on. It drives me nuts when I have a listing agent or buyer's agent go in and when they're finished the showing and they turn every light off. Please don't do that as a buyer's agent. Leave everything as you found it, unless somebody specifically said turn the lights off. But if it's the first day of the showing, leave the lights on. Just courtesy. Smells are big memory triggers. If your seller thinks that like vanilla cinnamon scented candle is great, that may not be.
Number one objection for all buyers is not price or all, it's
Smell, odor, yeah, it makes a difference. Preparing for the inspection, these are all good things to remind them. I go through this with them. I'm not going to go through it all now, but like change your air filters, especially before an inspection. Try to change your air filters. I tell sellers this. I send it out to them after we get an offer and say, hey, just a reminder, let's look at this list. Is there anything we need to do? They may do it, they may not. Some sellers just don't, but try to get it looking good so that it's, you know, you're not going to have a inspector pull out like a unchanged filter that's caked with dog hair and stuff. That just makes.
Well, they think your seller
Yeah.
is not maintaining.
Yes, exactly. So quick, that was not quick, but that was just a fairly in-depth way that I go through the house. I use a net sheet. This is something that's really important to me to talk about up front, explain to them what they are getting for the house. The copy of this is on the drive. I'll send it out as well, but plug in some ranges, keep the ranges big. Like this is, you know, a $150,000 spread. I got 4 examples. You've got your commission there. If there's, that title insurance is a crazy formula that Lloyd Carney put together, which is awesome. Property tax, plug the property taxes in there. And let them know based on how much their mortgage payoff is. If they've got, $350,000 of mortgage payoff, their takeaway, that's the key. $116,000. I'm really hoping to get 125. Okay, let's talk about what we need to do to get 125. We're going to have to paint the pink wall, or we're going to have to sod the yard, or we're going to have to we're going to have to stage it, et cetera. So that's key. That's usually the last thing that I go through. And then probably the very last thing I go through is next steps. Because once you have finished that first visit, what's next? All right. And then at that point, that's when I go through this kind of, and you can customize this. This is like the ideal, in my opinion, kind of the ideal marketing timeline. It's very similar to what's in the listing package, but I've just basically put timeframes on it so that if we have 3 weeks, I like to do this for 3 weeks. So that first thing I'm going to do is discuss the price range, agree on a timeline. I'm going to give you a copy today. Here's a printed copy, but I'm going to email you a copy of the property condition disclosure. Go ahead and start filling that out. It takes a minute. The state requires that we do that. That'll get them in the habit of art. That's the first thing I send them. It'll have them fill out the property condition disclosure. Once they do that, then I'm going to send them, a copy of the listing agreement after that. Maybe you can do it all together, but have them fill out that property condition disclosure to start that process. I'm going to order a staging bid. Again, if you're not doing that, take these out. Schedule media. I'd like to go ahead and get on a schedule. What stinks is when they're finally done and you're like, all right, I'm going to call the photographer. Yeah, I'm a week and a half out. Uh-oh. So go ahead and get it on the schedule now, create some timelines, identify needed repairs, find some handymen, get it done. Research and produce a target list of top producing agents in your market. Again, we can do that for you. That's ask anybody in the marketing department. I'm not sure if Rachel knows how to do that yet, but I will teach her and remind me to teach Rachel to do that, and we'll make sure she knows how to do that. Homework sheet. Sometimes I've got a little homework sheet. I'll send that out too, but it's basically a recap, favorite features of the house, any HOA dues. If they live in an HOA, especially condo, have them get all those docs up front. Chances are somebody's going to ask you for a copy of those. And if they make it contingent upon that and you don't have them, and it's a multiple offer, somebody could bail over that. So get all that stuff up front. And they usually have to be the one to do that because they're part of the HOA. So after that, we're going to install any staging, doing any professional photography, fill out the listing paperwork. List is coming soon, and MLS, whatever. And maybe there's a strategy of putting it on the Parks Village Bookert coming soon page. We did that for that deal and I told them I put something out there. I said, ballpark, here's what it is. I hadn't even met with them yet. I talked to them on the phone, did a pre-listing interview. And we probably had 40 people express interest. And I told them, I said, we can go on the market, but it could create this crazy frenzy. And their time frame was crazy fast. They were ideally, and it was, they could have kept it, but for all the things that I wanted to, I wanted to have time to get everything ready and get photos. And in their perfect world, they wanted to be out of the house. They didn't want to own a house in another state, and they were moving out of state, and they didn't want to own a house that they couldn't see. So I said, well, let's go to this group first, and chances are there's enough interest that we'll get a good buyer out of it. And we got one. So the order professional brochures, install a yard sign. In the wintertime, I always put little solar lights. Maybe I'm a geek, I don't know. Makes it light up at night because it's dark at 4 o'clock. Announce sales meetings, breakfast clubs, things like that. So week of list date, finalize the exact listing price. Again, I'll do a search. I set them up on all these, set them up on an auto search so they know what other properties are selling in their neighborhood. And that's it. So anyway, you can take a look at that. I printed out a copy and I'll send that out as well. What questions do you have? The 30-day price, that is, hopefully we don't have hopefully we're not on the market then, but if we're still in the market after 30 days, in this market, really, it's 7 days. I had a client say, we took a listing over condo. It was an $800,000 condo in Green Hills, which a 2-bedroom condo. And that's a little bit odd, but very nice building. It was on the market with a really good agent, beautiful photos, like it looks great. I went over to preview it. She was fed up, it wouldn't sell. I went over to preview it and it was empty. So it was sort of like, great impression online, wah, wah. I get in there and it's empty. That's no bueno, right? Because you immediately are like, this doesn't look as good as it did, as I remember it being online. I'm not getting the feeling, right? I'm not falling in love with it. And it was a giant open room, kitchen, dining, living. So it just felt smaller. Empty spaces feel smaller than proportionally furnished big spaces do. So anyway, she really wanted to get, like, the other agent had it at 850. And I said, this agent's great. You only need two things. You need it staged and you have to be priced below 800. If you do that, just tell her to do it and you'll sell it. Like, I don't need to take this listing to do that. And anyway, long story short, she and the other agent got in a spat and they parted ways. And so she's like, all right, now I really need help. Can you sell it for me? I want to price it at 825. I said, okay, this is your choice. I'm willing to do that. But in 7 days, if we don't have a contract, we need to be below 800. 7 days. Days 0 through 7, one showing. Dropped it to 799, got 4 showings right away and sold it on like day 10. So it works. Like, that's a small amount, but she was like, but I showed her all this data of, like, you know, and I can, if you want to stick around, I know we're running low on time, but if you want to stick around for a minute, I can show you a visual pricing tool that I use that I showed her that. And it was basically, it was kind of a no brainer for her.
I think it's the worst pricing time. In the 20 years I've been in business, that's the worst time ever. And we've been in this cycle long enough now that we're all seeing overly ambitious. Now we're seeing price questions.
Increase. Suddenly.
Yeah, they're not just going up another 100 or 200.
So this is a little tool that I used for pricing a house. It's based off the Ninja tool. I built it in Google Sheets just because the Ninja tool wouldn't work on Mac. Focus first, or at least back then it wouldn't. So anyway, long story short, basically this is what I went through with her. Ideally, you go through this in person, but it basically, I downloaded all the comps from Real Tracks. I plugged it in this thing. It gave a quick report. The main thing that I cared about was this graph right here, right? Oops. So this is the square footage. This is price, right? All the blue dots represent sold listings. I'm not sending her a list of all the listings so she can look at the photo and be like, well, that one doesn't have the chandelier that I have, or that one doesn't have the crown molding that I have. Like, who cares, right? They don't need to be distracted by that stuff. I wanted blue dots, right? All she needs to see are the blue dots. These are, and I sent her the actual listings, but like, that's what's important is getting a quick snapshot. So the blue dots are the average of all the sales, right, in the last 6 months or year or whatever it was. That is the very highest. This line is the average of all the blue dots. So at 1,700 square feet, the average sale price for hers was about 700,000, right? And look at that. There were 3 that sold right around her size for right there, like, and 2 more that are pending. This one is available for sale. This one is available for sale. She was here. She'd started here at 850 and then dropped to 839. Right? That's not selling. That's not selling. That's not selling. They are so far above this line. Like, visually, it's not selling. I said, let's say we cherry picked the very best comp and only used one comp. And we put a pink line here. The very best, the very highest comp puts you around that 750, 760 mark. Like, when I showed her that, it was like, ooh, nobody's ever shown me this before. Why didn't the other agent show me this? I said, well, she probably did, just in a different way. Or she didn't, I don't know. But you priced it too high. You need it staged and you need to be under $800,000. Ideally 750, but I think we can get it under 800, we can get it done. Because I think we can get it dialed in and looking really good, kind of get a refresh. I bet I can sell it. And we sold it for like 795, which is still like right up here, kind of set a new, yeah, we set a new benchmark. But this one page, she was like, sign me up. Where do I sign? I'm ready. Let's go.
Well, it gets them off of the, yeah, but this is houses not as good as mine.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, if you can, I can show you a little tool how to do that, but that was helpful. What else? Any other questions? We went over time. Sorry about that, but thank you all in Zoom world for joining in. I don't know if my speaker's on, if I can even hear you, but hopefully I could. That was a lot to zip through. Do y'all have any other questions? Digest? Anything you do that I didn't cover? Would that be considered crushing the listing limit? I don't know.
I think if you did 80% of it.
Yeah. That's good.
So that last item you showed us. That's different than property review.
That's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. Yep, it is. In fact, I don't even use this for real estate reviews anymore. I only use it for pricing. Because like, I only use it for pricing. I feel like that Real Scout real estate review is like, again, so much faster. You saw me click through a couple times today. Like just so much faster. So I do, so yeah, so I can send this link out to everybody if you want. Just, if you want to know how to do this, just, gosh, it goes bananas when you share. You share it. A quick version.
Program is on, allegedly is on all of our office village computers.
So this is one that this is kind of a version that I built. There's one called Focus First that is a little bit more robust than this, but you have to do it on another computer. So I just kind of created a web version of, I mean, it's just graphs.
Provide that for you.
Yeah, so it's similar, but yes, it comes from a platform called Focus First, which is on available on the computers, I think. And if it's not, we can add it. But all you do, if you're just looking at real tracks, let's say you want to look at, you're looking at, I don't know, what neighborhood should we look at? 37212. Let's say we're pricing a house in 37212. And then let's say it's minimum 3 beds, let's say between 2,500 and 3,500 square feet. We're gonna run some comps. And I like to select, historically I would select the last year. But, and I always click expired withdrawn. The last year can be a little bit tricky right now because.
I try to do 3 months, and if
Yeah.
I don't get enough, then I'll do 6 months.
Yeah, so probably don't do a year, but in fact,
That just depends on the area.
Yeah.
If there's an area that, you know, I've had a few in the last year or so that we're just in a neighborhood like 2 houses a year or so.
look like site built, single family house. Let's just see what that comes up with. Really want something where there's like an actual active listing. But anyway, basically all you do is once you have that, ideally you have something where there's active listings. It makes the graph look a little funny if there's not. You just click here and you click whatever your search is, and you can narrow your search, click download listings, click all results, unless you only selected some, which I didn't. And then this is important to change, click all fields, and then that's all you do. And then you just download it. It'll download a little TXT file, and you just go to this link. Once you save it in your own Google Drive, you click this thing and it'll say, click here. It'll erase everything in there, and you click file, import, and then you drag that little thing right there and you're pretty much done. Everything else just happens on its own. It's pretty fast. And ultimately what you'll get is it'll drop all that stuff, like whatever I put in there last time, there was nothing for sale. There's one pending, there's 23 closed in the last however many months, 12 months, I guess I was looking. And so it says, and 23 sales in the last 12 months. Well, if there's 24 sales, 24 divided by 12 months is 2. That's two houses per month they're selling. That's what the market is absorbing. It's like the market is Pac-Man. That's how many houses buyers are eating up. And the months of supply, if there was 2 houses on the market, then there would be a 1 month supply of homes, meaning in 1 month, all the houses in the market would sell. Assuming nothing else comes in the market, which we're thinking about coming in the market, so other people are too. So it just gives some quick stats. It gives a lot of different graphs, but again, I'll send out an email to everybody at Village here in a few minutes so that you can do that. The key is whatever link I send you, see what it says, you must copy to your own Google Drive first. So when you get it, I'll say this out loud, click. The Google file menu, not this file menu up here, but the Google file menu, file, make a copy. As long as you're logged into your Google Drive or your Google account, it will copy it and save it into your Google Drive, and you can use it from there. So something to play with, just another little tool that I use. That's it. All right, y'all. Got to wrap up, but enjoy your day. Thanks for sticking around.